In a lonely garage on a forgotten highway, a grieving mechanic and her loyal German shepherd barely hold on through endless nights of rain and regret. One stormy evening, a stranger's broken truck changes everything. What begins as a simple act of kindness in the pouring rain quietly unravels two shattered lives and sets in motion a gift neither ever expected. Sometimes the smallest mercy echoes the loudest. If this already pulls you in, like, share, and subscribe, because this story is just beginning. The old garage sat alone off a forgotten stretch of highway, its tin roof rattling softly under the endless Midwest rain. Inside, a single bulb swung overhead, casting long shadows across oil-stained concrete. The air smelled of cold metal and yesterday's coffee. Laura Hayes was 35, a sturdy woman with the quiet strength of someone who had learned to carry more than wrenches. Her dark brown hair, shoulder length, was always pulled back in a loose ponytail, strands escaping like thoughts she could not quite tame. Tanned skin bore the faint lines of too many late nights, and her hands, calloused, scarred, moved with practiced care over rusted tools. She wore the same navy blue overalls every day, stained dark with grease, sleeves rolled to the elbows, a gray t-shirt underneath clinging faintly to her frame. Her eyes, gray-green, held a steady watchfulness, but beneath that steadiness lay a weariness that no amount of work could scrub away. 3 years had passed since the accident that took her husband Tom, and still the silence in the garage felt louder than any engine roar. She had stopped expecting the pain to fade. She only hoped to outlast it. Nights were the hardest. Sleep came in fragments, broken by memories that arrived uninvited, the screech of tires on wet pavement, the phone call at dawn, the sudden emptiness of the bed. She kept the garage open late, telling herself it was for the occasional trucker, but really it was to keep the quiet from swallowing her whole. Duke was the only other living thing in that space most nights. A German shepherd, 6 or 7 years old, black and tan coat, still thick despite the years, he carried himself with the calm authority of a dog who had known both loyalty and loss. A small scar ran along his left hind leg, a souvenir from the wreck that took Tom. Duke had been Tom's dog first, riding shotgun on long hauls, ears perked at every new sound. After the funeral, when the shelter called to say the dog was waiting, Laura could not say no. She brought him home, and he never left her side again. He moved through the garage with deliberate grace, paws soft on concrete, eyes always finding her first. When she worked late, he lay close, chin on paws, watching. When she paused, he rose and pressed against her leg, warm and solid. Sometimes he would walk to the corner shelf where she kept Tom's photo, a simple frame, glass slightly dusty, and settle there, as if guarding the memory itself. His presence was not loud comfort. It was the steady rhythm of breathing, the faint click of nails on floor, the weight of a head resting on her knee. In those hours when the rain drummed steady and the world outside seemed very far away, Duke reminded her that some things endure. She did not speak of the guilt that still lived inside her chest, the what-ifs that whispered she should have been there that night, should have seen the storm coming sooner. She buried it under work, under the clank of tools, under the small routines that kept her moving. Yet every evening, when the last customer drove away and the highway lights flickered in the distance, the ache returned. She would sit on an old stool, wipe her hands on a rag, and stare at nothing. Duke would come then, always without being called. He would sit beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body, and wait. No demand, no rush, just waiting. In that silence, something small and fragile would loosen inside her, a breath she had not known she was holding. She would reach down, fingers sinking into the thick fur behind his ears, and for a moment the weight felt lighter. Not gone, never gone, but shared. And so the nights passed, one into the next, in the dim garage where grief and grace lived side by side. Laura did not know if she would ever feel whole again. She only knew that Duke was there, steady as the earth itself. And that was enough to keep her rising each morning, opening the door and letting whatever came next find her. Rain hammered the tin roof like 1,000 small regrets, the wind howling through cracks in the old garage doors. Lightning flickered, turning the highway into a brief silver ribbon before darkness swallowed it again. Inside, the single bulb fought to stay lit. The night had been quiet until the low rumble of a diesel engine cut through the storm. It coughed, sputtered, then died just outside the roll-up door. Duke was the first to sense trouble. His ears lifted, nostrils flared, and a low growl rose in his throat. He padded to the door, then barked sharp and urgent, once, twice, alerting Laura before she even heard the engine quit. She wiped her hands on the rag at her belt, stepped to the door, and lifted it just enough to see the big rig parked crooked in the gravel, headlights dimming like tired eyes. A man climbed down, soaked through, shoulders hunched against the wind. William Grant was in his early 60s, tall and broad, his silver pepper hair plastered to his scalp under a backward trucker cap. A short beard framed a weathered face, lines etched deep from decades on the road. His plaid flannel shirt clung wet to his chest, denim jacket heavy with rain. His eyes, brown and steady, carried the quiet weariness of a man who had seen too many miles and too many goodbyes, yet still held a flicker of gratitude beneath the exhaustion. He raised a hand in apology. "Engine quit on me," he said, voice low and gravelly, almost lost in the wind. "Didn't mean to trouble you this late." Laura did not hesitate. She motioned him inside, out of the downpour. Duke circled once, sniffed the stranger's boots, then settled beside him, pressing close enough that William could feel the dog's warmth through soaked jeans. The garage smelled of wet rubber and hot oil as Laura knelt by the engine bay, flashlight in hand. The smell hit her first, acrid, sharp, the faint burn of wiring about to fail. Duke had known it before she did. She worked steadily, tools passing between her hands and the dog's mouth when she called his name softly. Duke fetched wrenches, spark plugs, even the small rag she dropped, each time returning to her side with calm certainty. Hours slipped by. Rain drummed on, lightning flashed through the high windows. But the only sounds inside were the soft clink of metal, Laura's even breathing, and the occasional low sigh from William as he sat on an overturned crate. Duke lay at his feet now, head on paws, eyes half closed but watchful. At one point, William reached down, fingers brushing the thick fur behind the dog's ears. "This one's special," he murmured, almost to himself. "Reminds me of someone." Laura glanced up, caught the brief softening in his gaze, but said nothing. She tightened the last bolt, turned the key, and the engine caught, deep, steady, alive again. When the work was done, William reached for his wallet. Laura shook her head. "No charge," she said quietly. "You've got a long road ahead. Just get home safe." He looked at her then, really looked, as if seeing past the grease-streaked face and tired shoulders to the woman who had chosen kindness on a night when no one would have blamed her for turning away. He nodded once, slow, the way old men do when words feel too small. Duke rose, walked him to the door, tail low but steady. William paused in the doorway, rain still falling in sheets. He knelt briefly, cupped the dog's head in both hands, and whispered something Laura could not hear. Then he climbed back into the cab, lights cutting through the storm, and was gone. The tail lights faded into the dark. Laura lowered the door, the clang echoing long after the sound had stopped. She stood there a moment, listening to the rain ease, feeling the ache in her back and the quiet warmth that had settled somewhere deep in her chest. Duke came to her, pressed against her leg, and she rested her hand on his head. The garage felt different now, not larger, not brighter, but less empty. She did not know why a stranger's gratitude and a dog's steady loyalty could matter so much on a night like this. She only knew they did. Morning came slow after the storm, gray light filtering through the high windows of the garage. The air still held the damp scent of wet earth and cooling metal. The highway outside hummed with distant trucks, but inside everything felt quieter than before. Laura moved through the familiar hours with the same steady hands, tightening bolts, changing oil, listening to engines tell their stories. The garage remained a place of small repairs and smaller paychecks, the ledger on the shelf growing redder each week. Yet something had shifted, subtle as the first green after winter. She caught herself glancing at the door more often, half expecting another stranger to appear out of the rain. Duke sensed the change too. He followed her closer than usual, tail low but steady, eyes lifting to meet hers whenever she paused. One afternoon, the wait pressed hardest. Bills arrived in the mail, final notices, red ink stark against white paper. Laura sat on the old stool, head in her hands, the numbers blurring. She whispered to the empty space, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." Duke watched from the corner. Then he rose, padded to the shelf where Tom's photo stood beside a few forgotten keepsakes. He nosed gently at an old tennis ball, frayed and faded, the one Tom used to throw in the yard on lazy Sundays. The ball rolled out, bounced once, and came to rest at Laura's feet. She stared at it, throat tight. Duke nudged it again, tail giving a small wag. She picked it up, turned it in her fingers. A sound escaped her, not quite a laugh, but the ghost of one, soft and surprised. She tossed the ball lightly across the concrete. Duke chased it, paused skidding, then brought it back, dropping it at her feet with quiet pride. For the first time in years, she smiled, real, small, unguarded. The moment lasted only seconds, but it stayed with her, a tiny ember in the cold. That evening, the temper came unbidden. Duke, restless, began digging at a loose spot in the corner floorboards, claws scraping wood, searching for a bone he had buried long ago. Laura snapped, "Stop it, Duke! Not now!" Her voice cracked sharp in the quiet garage. He froze, ears flattening, eyes wide with the hurt only a loyal dog can show. She regretted it instantly. The anger drained away, leaving shame in its place. She knelt, reached out. Duke hesitated, then came, pressing his head into her chest. She wrapped her arms around him, face buried in thick fur, and the tears came hard and silent. "You're all I've got left," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He stayed still, breathing slow and even, letting her hold on as long as she needed. In that embrace, something loosened inside her, a knot of guilt she had carried since the accident, since the night she could not save Tom. Duke had never asked for forgiveness. He simply stayed. And in his staying, he offered what no words could, the possibility that she might one day forgive herself. The days grew a little lighter after that. Word began to spread quietly along the highway about the woman who fixed trucks in the storm without asking for a dime, about the big German shepherd who watched over her like a shadow. A few more trucks pulled in, drivers nodding with respect, leaving tips they pretended were change. Laura did not speak of it much. She worked, she breathed, she let Duke walk beside her. Each evening he would settle near the door, ears pricked at passing headlights, as if guarding not just the garage, but the fragile hope that had begun to take root inside her. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She only knew that the silence felt less heavy, the nights less long, because a dog who remembered love refused to let her forget it too. Weeks had slipped by, and the garage stood bathed in late afternoon sun, golden light slanting through the open door. The air carried the faint scent of pine from nearby woods, a quiet promise after so many gray days. Tools lay scattered, waiting. Laura was wiping down a workbench when the deep rumble came, slow, deliberate, like a memory rolling in from the horizon. She stepped outside, hand shading her eyes. A flatbed truck eased to a stop, its trailer loaded high with gleaming equipment, a hydraulic lift, rows of snap-on tools, a compressor humming softly even at rest. The delivery man hopped down, clipboard in hand, a young fellow in his 20s with a quick smile and neat work shirt. "For Laura Hayes?" he asked, voice light and efficient. She nodded, confusion knitting her brow. He handed over an envelope, sealed plain, before unloading the gear. Duke trotted out, ears perked, circling the truck once before sitting at her side, watchful. Laura tore the seal carefully, fingers trembling just a touch. The paper inside was thick, the handwriting steady but aged. "Dear Laura," it began, "that night in the storm, you gave without asking. I was more than a tired driver. My name is William Grant, retired from a life building companies, but broken by one loss I could not fix. My daughter, Anna, ran a shop much like yours. Cancer took her 2 years ago. She had a dog, a German shepherd like your Duke. Same loyal eyes, same quiet strength. Seeing you two together, working through the rain, it was like seeing her again. I could not save her place, but maybe I can help yours." Laura's breath caught. She read on, the words blurring. William's gift was not just metal and machines. It was a bridge across griefs. She lowered the letter, the paper crinkling softly in her grip. Duke looked up, eyes steady as if he understood. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the gravel. Laura knelt slowly, the ground cool beneath her knees. Memories flooded in. Tom's laugh echoing in the garage, the way he'd tossed that old ball for Duke, the accident that stole it all. And now this, a stranger seeing in her what she had lost in herself. Tears came then, hot and unbidden, tracing paths down her cheeks. She reached for Duke, arms wrapping around his solid frame, face buried in the warm black and tan fur. He leaned into her, breath even, a low whine escaping as if sharing the ache. "Oh, Duke," she whispered, voice breaking. "He saw us. He saw—" The dog stayed still, letting her sobs shake them both. In that moment, the weight she had carried alone, the guilt over Tom, the fear of failing, began to crack. Not shatter. Not yet. But crack, letting light seep through. William's words echoed in her mind. The image of her and Duke in the storm had given him hope. And now it returned to her, a circle closing softly. The delivery man paused his work, hat in hand, but said nothing. The world held its breath. When the tears slowed, Laura rose, wiping her face with the back of her hand. The new tools stood ready, symbols of a kindness she had not sought but needed deeply. Duke nudged her leg, tail giving a small wag, as if to say it was time to move forward. She folded the letter carefully, tucking it into her pocket like a promise. The garage felt warmer now, the light softer. She did not know all that lay ahead, but she knew this. Grief could be shared, and from that sharing, healing might grow. Quietly, gently, like roots finding soil after rain. The garage breathed differently now, its doors wide open to the soft light of early evenings. Tools gleamed on clean racks. The hydraulic lift hummed low and steady, and the air carried the clean scent of fresh oil instead of rust. Life had returned, quiet but sure. Months passed, and the highway found its way back to Laura's door. Trucks rolled in one after another. Drivers who had heard the story, locals who now trusted her hands, young men and women eager to learn. She taught them slowly, not just how to turn a wrench, but how to listen to an engine, the way one listens to an old friend. Her voice, once guarded, grew gentle in the telling. The garage became more than a shop. It became a place where people lingered, shared coffee from a battered pot, spoke of hard roads and small graces. Duke moved among them like a quiet guardian, tail wagging slow, accepting pats and scraps with dignified calm. His presence seemed to soften every edge. The young apprentices laughed more easily. The older drivers spoke more openly. Laura watched it all from the workbench, a small wonder settling in her chest. She had not expected this. She had only meant to keep going. Yet kindness, once given, had circled back and multiplied, turning her solitary place into something shared. One clear afternoon, a familiar diesel rumble approached. William Grant stepped down from his cab, older but straighter, the lines on his face softened by time, and something like peace. He wore the same plaid flannel, sleeves rolled, but his eyes held a quiet brightness they had not carried before. He walked straight to Laura, hands in pockets, and looked around the bustling space. "You did this," he said, voice low and rough with feeling. "Not the tools. You." They sat on the old bench outside, Duke between them, head resting on William's knee as if he had known the man all along. William spoke then. Of Anna, of the empty house after she was gone, of the long drives he took to outrun the silence. Laura listened, her own memories rising soft and unhurried. She told him about Tom, about the nights she thought she would never rise again, about the way Duke had stayed when everything else left. The words came easy now, no longer heavy with shame. Duke looked from one to the other, eyes steady, as if he understood every unspoken part. When the sun began to lower, William rose, placed a hand on Laura's shoulder. "You gave me back a piece of her," he said. "Thank you." She nodded, throat tight, and watched him drive away, the taillights fading gentle into dusk. Later, when the last customer had gone and the garage stood quiet again, Laura walked to the edge of the lot with Duke at her side. The highway stretched empty under a sky streaked with rose and gold. A soft wind moved through the grass, carrying the faint smell of distant rain. She stopped, looked out over the road that had once felt like a river carrying everything away. Duke sat beside her, ears lifted, gazing toward the horizon with the same calm certainty he had always shown. Laura knelt, rested her forehead against his, felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "Thank you," she whispered, "for pulling me out of the dark." He turned his head, pressed his nose to her cheek, warm and sheer. In that moment the past did not vanish. It simply became part of the ground she stood on, solid now, no longer shifting. She rose, hand on his head, and they stood together as the light faded. The road ahead was long, but it no longer frightened her. Kindness had walked it first, and loyalty had never left her side. Friends, as the years gather and the road grows quieter, loneliness, illness, and old aches can feel heavier than any storm. Yet remember, a single act of kindness, yours or someone else's, can still light the darkest night, just as it did for Laura and Duke. You are never truly alone. Hold on, reach out, share your story in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and tell a friend. May the Lord wrap you in His peace, heal your body, and fill your heart with gentle hope today. God bless you always.